Hey, Walter Sorrells back with another Knife Makers Friday 5. Today we're talking tools. So a couple weeks ago, I got a note from a young lady who is interested in making knives, and she said, do I need to buy all these tools? And she listed a big long list of tools in order to get started as a knife maker. So my answer to everybody in this case is always no, you don't. Here's why. All right, so let me back up on that question a little bit. I get literally hundreds of emails and Instagrams and YouTube comments every month asking about the same kinds of questions, most of them about gear. Should I buy this? Should I buy that? Do I need this? Do I need that? The answer that I always give is the same one that, if you ask a pistol instructor, what's the best gun for self-defense purposes? The best gun is the one that you have. In other words, if a gun's too big, too heavy, too expensive, whatever, so that you're going to leave it in a safe somewhere where you can't get at it when you need it, then what's the point of that gun? Same thing is true with tools. Everybody's got a budget. Everybody's got a certain space that they have to live in. You got kids, family, job, all kinds of things that you have to fit, your knife making hobby or business, whichever it might be, into. And if you can fit endless numbers of tools and a giant 3,000 square foot shop, with, that you can back a truck into and unload CNC machines into, hey, fantastic. On the other hand, if you're living in an apartment in a big city and you don't have a garage or a shop space at all, then the situation that you're in is totally different, but it doesn't mean that you can't make knives. So when I talk about tools, I always like to think about what kind of glide path am I on as a knife maker. So what do I mean by that? Nobody comes out full blown as a professional knife maker with all the skills and all the tools and, suddenly is making, $1 million worth of knives every year. You have to start wherever you are. You might have a lot of money, you might not. You might have a lot of space, you might not. You may have all kinds of competing demands on your time, you might not. So the point is to look at where you are honestly, and then look at where you might like to be. I say might because you may change your mind further down the line, but where you might like to be at a certain point later on. And if you look at it that way, then you realize I don't need all the gear. I don't need all the stuff right now. I'll start with what's right in front of me, and what's right in front of me may be, a kitchen in an apartment with a hammer and a saw and some sandpaper. That may be where you're starting. It's not necessarily a great place to start, but that may be where you are. So what I mean by talking about a glide path is, okay, if I'm really into this, if this is something that's really important to me, then I have to think long term. Maybe I want to get out of this apartment. Maybe I want to, be able to buy bigger tools, whatever it might be. And so if you think about, okay, here's what I'm going to need right now, 6 months, maybe my plan is to move to a different town. Maybe my kid's moving out and I'm going to have more space around the house. He's going off to college. Maybe I'm going to be retiring in 2 years. There are a million things that are variables in your life that might change. And so if you say, okay, here's the kind of tools that I can afford right now. Here's the kind of tools that I could afford or that I have space for or that I can use in 6 months, 2 years, 10 years. Then it gives you a little bit more of a feeling of okay, I'll limp along with this particular tool, but I know that, in a certain period of time, I'm going to replace that with something bigger, more professional, more expensive, whatever it might be. We live in a I want it all now kind of culture. But, the reality is that knife making tools can be pretty expensive, and it's just not feasible for most people to just run out and slap down a giant check to just fill up a huge shop. So Let me just give you kind of an example of a glide path that you could apply to belt grinders, because that's something that a lot of people ask about. And if you apply this same general kind of approach to belt grinders, you could apply it to all kinds of other things, machine tools or whatever it might be. So let's imagine that you have very, very little space, very, very little budget. Maybe you're a young person, maybe you live in an apartment, whatever it might be. And so there's just some real limitations on your space and your budget. Does that mean you can't get a belt grinder? No, it doesn't. It means that you have to be kind of judicious about how you parcel out your space and your time and your money. So maybe you're that guy who needs to start with a really small 1-inch belt grinder, a 1 by 32 or 48 or whatever it might be. There's some very small ones. The reality is that if you get a really small belt grinder that costs, maybe a couple $100 at Home Depot or Lowe's or someplace like that, that belt grinder is not going to be super fast. You're going to have to change belts all the time. It's not a professional model. It's not as rigid. It's not as powerful. It's probably not going to last as long. But for you, that might be the best belt grinder. There are all these guys on the forums who are telling you, got to have a KMG, got to have a Bader, got to have a Wirtz, got to have it. Don't worry about that. If you can't afford that, if you don't have time, space, whatever, get what works for you now. Another 6 months, maybe then it's time for you to get that Grizzly that costs maybe, $700, $500, whatever it is, 2x72 with a contact wheel and an idler wheel, and that's all. That's cool too. That's still a big upgrade over that small 1-inch belt grinder that you got for your first belt grinder. At a certain point, you realize, hey, look, I'd like a little more flexibility. I'd like more power. I'd like more rigidity, whatever it might be. And then you can go to that next belt grinder. There are a whole slew of belt grinders out there that aren't quite as expensive as, let's say, a KMG or a Bader, maybe $1,000 or something like that, but that are really a little bit more made for knife makers than, let's say, the Grizzly or the Coot or some of the, there's some other ones, or homemade ones, shop-made kind of things. So you upgrade to that. Maybe 2 years down the line, you've started selling your knives. You can start investing more money into your, growing business. Maybe you've moved to a bigger shop space. Okay, now it's time to start laying down the money for those big professional grinders. So the same thing's true for, a drill press or whatever. There are just a wide range of products out there, and you can start with that simple and modest and inexpensive version and move up as you go. So here's the important part about this. If you have a sense of, hey, here's where I'm going to be in 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, then, you can feel comfortable with, hey, I'm working with, something that maybe is not, the long-term solution to what I'm doing. But for right now, it works great. And I feel like I'm on a glide path. I'm always moving forward. You use a tool for a couple of years, realize that it has limitations that you want to fix, sell it on Craigslist, sell it on eBay, give it to a friend, donate it to the shop class at your high school, if they still have a shop class at your high school, whatever it might be. And then you can move on to the next thing that's more rigid, bigger, stronger, more powerful, more flexible, whatever it might be. And by staying on that glide path and feeling like, hey, I'm always making progress, you don't feel like, oh God, this is, not a doable thing. Because I think a lot of people who start out in hobbies get frustrated at a certain point because they feel like, oh, I see all these guys on the forums talking about all this stuff and they're doing all this great stuff, and here I am, I don't have the equipment, I don't have the gear, I don't have the whatever. That's okay. So just stay on your glide path, live your life. This is your knife making journey. Do it your way. Thanks for watching, guys. If you feel like you got something out of this video, don't forget to subscribe. Also, click on the link to Patreon for a great way to give back to the channel. Plus, check me out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Links in the description. If you want something sharp and pointy, maybe a gift for yourself or one of the cooler people in your life, check out my Tactics Armory website and pick up one of our tactical or outdoor knives. And finally, if you want to learn to make hamones or Japanese swords, check out WalterSorrellsBlades.com, where you can find videos about how I make hamones, as well as forging, mounting, polishing, and fittings for Japanese swords. Thanks, and see you soon.